Hey, welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Caleb Teskey, coming at you today with another fantastic interview that I'm super excited for, and I've been putting together for quite some time now. Before we get into that, I do just want to thank my last guest here, Dusty Kenny from Cambridge Cannabis Company. Another great interview with Dusty. Big homie Wes. It was a super fun show that they put on at Oasis last weekend. I did have to cancel with Chuck from Sambo Creek Filtration, which I was bummed out about, but hopefully we'll be getting him back on here soon. We already got one comment here waiting to hear Lars. And I don't want to waste too much time, but we got some other great interviews coming up here. I've got Eric Kafka from Spring Your Way, Vermont on Thursday the 7th at 7 p.m. I've got Todd Bailey from the Craft Retailers Association of Vermont, or the Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont, on September 11th at 7 p.m. I've got Caitlin Ormond, a former GTI employee who says that she was robbed at one of their facilities in Maryland, coming on the 14th at 1 p.m., it looks like. And we got Alex Grosser. We got a medical patient on the 18th at 7. And I got Shannon O'Brien from the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission coming on September 21st at 7 that I'm super excited about. I got Miguel Lopez coming back. I got Dan Pomerantz coming back. I got the guys from Mr. Z's. I got Joe Veldon from Seven Leaf. I got Brendan Bigfoot coming on. I got Dr. Anna Schwabi, and my man, Alex Miller. But that's all I got. I don't want to waste too much time because this is going to be, I think this might take a minute to unravel this. So let's just bring on my guest here. It's Lars Olofsson joining me from Sweden today. Lars, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you. Very nice to be here with you.
Before we get into any of the particulars of this, would you mind giving us a 5-minute life story?
Oh, bye. 5 minutes. Yeah.
Take your time too, because I do think your background is relevant here, and I'd really like to hear about it.
Yeah, well, I'm from Sweden, and I've been living in Sweden more or less all my life. But I've been traveling, and from time to time, I've been living in more than 10 countries, actually, in Asia, in the US. Been living in Boston and in Florida, in Orlando, in Florida as well. So I've been traveling quite a lot. I'm 66 and I'm an attorney of law. I started my career in the military. After the mandatory military service, I kept on in the military, and I made a career within the Swedish Navy SEALs. And then I turned out to, or went further on into the military intelligence services in Sweden. But after that, that was for 6 years. I studied law, started at university in Sweden, and took my master degree. And then I had a midterm, so to speak, working a couple of years. And then I went to the US, and I was in Boston, or I should say Cambridge. It's very important to make the difference between Cambridge and Boston at Harvard Business School. So I took an MBA at Harvard in Cambridge, and then I was headhunted into a job as a CEO in one of the subsidiary companies in a very large retail company in Sweden, in Europe, actually. I made a career during the 80s, and then I took my golden handshake in 1990 and then started my own company. And it's a combination of a law company, a law firm, and also an investment company. So that's basically my whole story.
And you said you've been, I believe you said on the phone, you've been working and investing in the cannabis industry here for like a decade, helping people get licenses as well.
Yeah, that's right. I came across the cannabis industry some 10, 11 years ago. And it was a friend of mine, a business partner, who introduced me to the cannabis industry. And I was very, very excited about the industry. I'm very much into alternative medicine and such things as well. and see what kind of new investments and new things within the medical industry. So I've been helping companies with licenses. I have done investments in cannabis industry. I'm part owner of a large production facility in North Macedonia in Eastern Europe, where we are growing cannabis, medical cannabis, indoor in greenhouses, very, very extremely controlled environment and such things, and supplying to the large pharmaceutical industries. And cannabis also is very, very close to my heart as well, because 4 years ago I was diagnosed by cancer. It started with skin cancer, and then the cancer was spread into my lymphatic system. And so I had treatment 3 years ago, and it was quite severe treatments, a lot of side effects. And I could tell you honestly that the reason why I'm still alive today is that I used CBD oil parallel to the traditional treatment, CBD oil with THC. And that's the only reason why I'm still alive today. And I should also say I'm completely free from cancer today.
That's great to hear, Lars.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations, man. I hope it stays that way.
Absolutely. I actually have appointments, the last checkup after this treatment tomorrow. So I'm going to meet my doctor tomorrow, but everything is good. Yep.
Cool. I just want to put a couple of these up here. We got a bunch of people watching. Benjamin Martin saying hello to Daniel, and Daniel Johansson. I see you, man. Thank you for helping put this together. He really sort of lit a fire under my ass to get on top of this. So thank you, Daniel. Stephen Shobes, excited. Lady Australia. We got people all over the world here. A friendly hello to all. And this is my dude in Massachusetts, I think. Paul's Patio. Hey, this is great. Thank you, Lars. Andy Mine. Hello on this Sunday. Yep. And we're gonna go from there. Cool. So I wanted to I felt like it was really important to get that context for as we discuss the rest of this story, because I like to do the background, because I feel like it helps frame this in a way. You know, one thing I'm personally super fond of is looking into scams and schemes and all kinds of different, and I'm not an expert in a lot of those things, including like business and finance. But I love just reading about stuff like that. And I really feel like you have the perfect background to be investigating these types of things.
Yeah, that's right. I come across the first large international investment scam about 15 years ago. And I had some clients who came to me and asked me for advice and see if we could do something for them to try to retrieve the money. And that's the path I've been walking for the past 15 years now. So I've been specializing in investigating these large investment scams and, of course, helping the victims of these scams. And the combination of having the legal side and also having the financial side, and also the background with military intelligence to collect information, evaluate information, assess situations and such things. That is very, very important, and it's quite unique. I'm not bragging, but it's a very unique combination where that you need to have if you are going to go into these kind of things. And I'm sure we're going to talk about whistleblowers and all these kind of things later on. So that is very useful when you are working with these kind of cases, to have that kind of background.
And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but as you speak, I'm going to pop in as I did and just focus on you so people could see what you're saying. And my mic does cut out when I do that, but I am going to be listening in the background. I just like to focus on the guests when they're speaking. Yep. And since you mentioned it, the word whistleblower is something I deal with a lot. you talked about on the phone sort of your protocol. So you're dealing with sensitive information here, I assume. And when these people come forward, maybe we should start at the very beginning. Like, who was the first person who came forward, and how do you handle these cases as they come at you?
Yeah. So in this case, this large case that we are working on right now is called UC Fields. And I think we are going to talk a lot about UC Fields now. And this was something that started for me back in July last year, in mid-July last year. And it was actually one of my associates now, Daniel Johansson in Sweden, who came to my business partner, Mrs. Nina, to ask her if I could look into this UC Field and see, was it a scam? Because what has been happening then was that a week ago, before, the UC Fields organization has just shut down the internet platform. Nobody could access the accounts. Nobody could withdraw any money. So what he said was, could I look into this event and see, is it a scam or is it just some temporary problem or whatever it is? And I looked at this UC Fields concept. I looked at the website and how it was presented, the financial side and so on. And I said to Daniel just after 5 minutes, this is a scam. This is a scam for sure, because I have seen the same kind of concept before. Not just in the cannabis business, but it follows a kind of scammer's playbook. It's a manual. There are some very distinct features about these kind of scams, and in some cases,
let's get into what those are. Like, so when you first look at when Daniel comes to you and presents you this information, you start investigating it. What are the first things that you see for people out here who might have no idea what it's like to get scammed or have never been involved in anything like that? I would like if you could tell us really the first things you noticed that were red flags for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the first red flag is a very large return of investment. As I said, I'm running an investment company as well. And if you're prepared to take some risks, then you could have a return of investment. There is a kind of rules of thumbs in the investment, early stage investment business, that you could have up to 25 or maybe 30% return on investment on an annual basis. So everything that promise you more return of investments more than 30%, that is something that is too good to be true. That is just the truth. It's too good to be true. And in this case, the UC Field, they promise a return of investment of 70%, but not on an annual basis, but after 3 months. So if you add 4 times 3, then all of a sudden they were promising you 250% of return of investment. And that is just crazy. The second thing that I'm looking at is the risk, how the risk is presented. And in this case, the UC Field, they said this is basically risk-free. It's 99% risk-free.
And that's always a red flag, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the last percent, they said this was insured by some insurance company. So when someone comes and say, you have an investment that is basically risk-free, that is a huge red flag. So that was the second red flag. Then if you just think about the logic, if you have an investment opportunity that could give you more than 200% of return of investment, why should you share that investment opportunity with someone else?
Which is something I believe you said on the phone. It's like knowing the lottery numbers.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you know the lottery numbers in advance, why do you go to your mates? Why do you go to your pals and say, well, you could buy the numbers for that? It doesn't make any kind of sense. You should play on the lottery by yourself if you know the lottery numbers in advance. So that is the third red flag. And then being experienced about the cannabis industry, there isn't that kind of return of investment. Very few of the farmers, very few of the producers are actually having the very good profits on the crop and the production. It's a very, very, and it's the same way in all kind of farming. So it doesn't matter if it's cannabis or if it's whatever kind of crop you're growing. As a farmer, you are not earning very much. And it's a very risky business as well, because the weather and all kind of things that you cannot predict in advance. And the fifth red flag, or the fifth reason why I'm saying that this is something that I have seen before in some of the cases, some of the how things was presented and such thing was more or less a copy paste of what I have been seeing before. Some of the text on the website, I have seen these texts before in other scams. So it was just a copy paste.
And one of the things I wanted to mention that sounded like a big red flag to me was the banking piece of this, because it sounded like people who wanted to invest in this were told, hey, you have to go through these banks in Cyprus or wherever the banks were, due to some of the federal illegality, I assume. But I'd love to hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is more the more sophisticated red flags, because if you know a little bit about the banking system and the financial industry, the world financial industry, you know that a bank in Cyprus, that is a red flag, because Cyprus has been a center for the Russian mafia. All the oligarchs that is now sanctioned had banks accounts in Cyprus. There has been a number of scandals in Cyprus, and Cyprus is a kind of offshore country when it comes to financing, for instance.
Certainly in the reading I've done, Cyprus pops up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you did a little bit more due diligence and look into, there was this company, the bank in Cyprus is called ISX Bank, ISX Pay. And if you just did a little bit research, Google ISX Pay, for instance, then up come a lot of very shady businesses. They were expelled from Australia, where they originate from. They were thrown out from the stock exchange in Australia, for instance.
Is that what we're? Is this it?
Business going on.
I tried to pull it up here real quick.
Yeah.
ISX Financial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to pull it up real quick in case anyone listening was curious and wanted. I'm also going to do some more research on that too after we talk.
Yeah. So the one that just did a very basic due diligence, just Google some of the names that was presented. That also gave a number of red flags. I lost count about how many red flags. I lost count of 15 or something like that. So yes, it was a scam. And there is also another question that I receive quite often. Was it a scam from day one, or was it something that was intended to be a legit business to start with, but then it turned out to be a illegit business.
And that's a great question also, because I'm sure a lot of scams start out with good intentions and then devolve into this sort of, we could fleece a bunch of people. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. Go ahead.
It could be, because if you're looking at these scams or these investment opportunities, you could view them as a startup company, because that is it's very equal to a startup company. You have a business concept, you put together a team, you have a founding team, and then you have to recruit some specialists who are good at IT or marketing or whatever it is needed. And then you have to do a business plan, and then you have to have some kind of financing and such things as well. So if you're comparing these kind of scams as a startup company, then you could see if there was any intention to do any kind of supply chain management or a contract with customers, or all these kind of things that is normal for a startup company. And nothing of this was in place. Everything was just completely just a front. Nothing. There wasn't any substance at all. And that's why I'm saying this was a scam from start. There wasn't no intention to do any kind of legit business. And that has been confirmed as well during from July up to until now. It has been verified many times now.
I want to throw in this comment here I got from Benjamin Martin saying most of the people trust the banking system. Being able to invest by SEPA was making the business more legitimate. I don't know what SEPA is. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Yeah. SEPA, that is the European banking transfer system, because you have the SWIFT system that cover all the whole world. So if you are doing what is called a cross-border payment from one country to another country, then you are using the SWIFT system. And normally a payment takes a couple of days through the SWIFT system. You could pay a little bit more for an express transfer, but normally it takes 2 or 3 bank days. But within the EU, the 27 countries within the EU in Europe, they have developed inside the SWIFT system that is called the SEPA system. And it's basically the same, but it's much faster. So it doesn't take more than 1 day instead of 2 or 3 days. So that is it. And
so you can move money around. You can move money around very quickly.
Exactly. And that could also be some kind of assurance that if they are using the SEPA system should have seen that this was a scam, that they are filtering and scanning all the transactions there, so there isn't any illegit business involved. And that's why, for instance, in the SEPA system, Cyprus would have come up as a red flag and what is called in the banking system a suspicious activity.
Yeah, and I know in America we have something called the suspicious activity report.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything over $10,000, I assume international banks have something like that.
Absolutely, and this suspicious activity report has to be made not just because there is a transfer of more than $10,000 or something like that. There is also a number of other factors that decided if there is going to be a red flag. And Cyprus was one of those. The other thing is that cannabis, the word cannabis, if you are writing that you are now transferring money and the purpose is investing in cannabis, because that has to be put into the transfer when you are issuing the transfer. Cannabis, the word cannabis is also something that raises a red flag. It doesn't mean that the transfer shouldn't go through, but it's something that the banking system should look into. Is this something that could be a illegit business, or is it a legit business? And just to give you one example, in Europe, and I think it's the same in the US, if you are a cannabis producer and you go to your bank and want to open a bank account, it's very difficult for the company to open a bank account because you are handling cannabis, even if it's a legit business and
Right.
you could show that you have contract with pharmaceutical companies that is buying your products and all these kind of things, and you have a license and you have all the things that is needed. Still, the banking system is very suspicious about the cannabis business. So it's very, very difficult to just get a bank account. And that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter if it was $200 or $20,000. The banking system should have raised a red flag when it comes to transaction of investment in cannabis.
Well, however, my counterpoint would be, as Benjamin said here, being able to invest by SIBA was making it more legitimate. So it seemed like a convenient cover, maybe. Hey, I know the banks don't take cannabis accounts, but we're going to offer you this convenient option. Yeah, it's in Cyprus, and maybe that's a hub of money laundering, but it's convenient.
Yeah. And there is so many other things that also make the system, this red flagging system, to pop up as a suspicious activity. One of the other things is that if you are a normal person, if I may say so, if you are a normal person that just pay your bills, you just pay your rent, you just pay for your food, you never do any international transaction to begin with. If you just start, if this person starts to send money abroad and do cross-border payment, it doesn't matter if it's in Cyprus or if it's cannabis or whatever it is. If he starts buying toothpaste from France, for instance, if he just starts doing transaction internationally, that is something that is also going to raise a red flag if he does it more than 1 or 2 times.
Even stuff I've bought stuff in California before where the bank has been like, hey man, are you in California right now? It's like, no, I was just buying something online. But that's a great point you make.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting, Caleb, to say that if I'm representing today about 1,500 clients, 1,500 victims of this juicy field scam. And the clients of mine who has done most transaction from his bank account to the Cyprus bank account, my clients, I have one client who has done 119 transactions during about 10 months. So this guy has done more than 20 transactions, more than 10 transactions every month. And as I said, if you are doing 2 or 3 transactions, it doesn't matter if it's a small amount or whatever it is. That is something that is not normal for you as a normal person to do, and that should raise definitely some suspicious.
Unless you're dealing with a bank who doesn't care about red flags or something.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because when I'm looking into this this whole business with UC Field, what strikes me, the observation I have done, is that there are so many institutions, so many companies that has failed in their compliance, or not just done the normal work that they should have been doing, and so on. It's not just that The bank shouldn't have allowed this to happen. There are a number of other companies who has been cooperating with UC Field, let UC Field use their, for instance, social media platforms for marketing and so on. And there is a number of people, specialist consultants, who has done marketing, advertising, and management consultants, and so on. So there are so many different kind of institutions, companies, organizations, and individuals who has actually failed in the normal work and the normal due diligence. And that is one of the reasons why this UC Field scam becomes such a, quote, success.
And now, so there's a lot to unpack there too. So you said about 1,500 clients involved in this UC Field case here, and I do want to. I like to interrupt here I'm supposed to do this like every 50 minutes. Boom. I'm talking with Lars Olofsson about the Juicy Field scam in Europe. And I'm sorry, I spelled your name wrong. I spelled it with an A. I'm going to go back and fix that. So when you just this,
no problem.
Yeah, I just noticed that, and I apologize, my man. So you got 1,500 clients now.
I have 1,500 clients. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And can you explain to us sort of the scale of this fraud? How many countries? Like, it sounds like you have people all over the world coming forward.
Yeah, that's right. I have 1,500 clients, 1,500 victims, and these victims' clients come from 58 countries all over the world. So I have clients, most of my clients are on the European continent, in Germany, in France, in Spain, Portugal, Italy, and all over. So I think I have clients from all the European countries. I have clients in North America, from the US, in the Canada. I think I have something about 25 clients in the US, for instance. The country where I have most of my clients is actually Mexico. I have almost 70 clients in Mexico. And I have a lot of clients in South America as well, in Brazil, Argentina, Peru, and more or less all the South American countries, and in Asia as well, in Australia, New Zealand, China, Vietnam, and so. But altogether, there are about 125,000 people who has invested in the UC Field, 125,000. And I have that number verified a number of times. I'm quite sure it was about 125,000 victims altogether. My clients has lost on an average, my 1,500 clients has lost on an average about $33,000.
Wow.
And my clients is very representable of all the 125,000 clients. So it's not that my clients has lost more than all the other victims. My clients is very, very representative for the average of these victims. And that's why I'm saying, if I added up all, not just the normal money, what is called the fiat money, but also cryptocurrency, there is about 60% of the investment was done in normal money, and 40% was done in cryptocurrency.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So if I put all these together, the normal money and the cryptocurrency, all together, these 125,000 people has lost more than $3 billion altogether.
Yeah, so I just ran some quick numbers. You said you have 1,500 clients. They lost about 30,000 or 31,000 or something. So yeah, that's up close to $50 million, just the people that you're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And what is also the sad part is that all these my clients, and I know, and I have a team of more than 30 people who are helping me
I meant
with
to ask you about
research.
that too. Please tell us about your team a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I have a core team. We are 6 people in the core team. We are working full time on this, and 7 days a week, I could tell you. And then I have a number of people who are helping me with research and so on. From time to time, they are more or less working on full time, helping me collecting information. Sometimes they are helping me just a couple of hours and so on. So I have a little bit more than 30 people who has been more or less involved and spend a lot of time to help me to collect information and also managing these 1,500 clients, because one of the biggest problems for a lawyer to handle these kind of class actions. Every lawyer knows that if you have a group of people who you are representing, that is a very difficult situation, because your clients have different kind of needs. They have been suffering differently on an individual basis. They have what they have lost was in some cases all the money, and in some cases it's just a part of what they have available in for investments and so on. And they also have to actually work together for so everybody knows that it's a very, very difficult situation to have these kind of class actions. And that was actually a funny story, because I was in contact with an Italian lawyer in the beginning in August last year, and he collected about he had 50 clients altogether. And after a month, he contacted me and said, I cannot do this anymore. It's just absolutely crazy. I need to work 24/7. They are calling me on Saturday evenings. They are calling me on Sunday mornings. And I need to constantly inform them what is happening and so on. And sometimes they don't agree between each other, and there is internal fighting between the clients and all these kind of things. And he said, I cannot do this anymore. I had to stop. And he had 50 clients, and after 1 month, he has to shut down the operation because he couldn't handle it anymore.
I mean, I assume you have to interview all these people and get the whole story. And if you got 1,500 of those people,
yeah, and keep them informed and so on. So we have different kind of groups on Telegram, for instance. I have almost 3 people who are constantly in contact with the people on the Telegram group, just managing these groups and so on. So it's a huge operation to just keep these 1,500. And I'm sending newsletters today. I'm sending a newsletter more or less on a weekly basis, informing my clients. And my clients is also sending me emails, and I love to have the emails from my client. So I have a lot of emails to respond to as well. So
I bet. Yeah. I do want to say to all the people in the chat here, I see some people, Trenton Simper out in Washington, Dora Dark in Germany, Nina Jan's daughter, I think she's in Sweden, Karsten Elfring, Mr. Arndt. I see you guys chatting over there saying hello. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in here. Maxime Husselstein, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I know he had a language barrier and was a little sad that couldn't listen. And I wish I could do this.
Maxime very well. She is one of my clients. So.
Okay, cool. Well, I'd like to. I wish I could speak French. You know.
Yeah.
Un petit peu.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember much from the 2 years in high school.
And that's another problem, because if you have clients from 58 countries, Then you have to cover English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and so on. So more or less all the information I'm sending to my clients, I had to translate into 4, 5, or 6 different languages just to keep them informed.
Wow. Here's another lady, Switzerland, Marianne Prodham. Cool.
Yeah, she's also a client of mine, been helping a lot.
Cool. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you, because we talked about, you mentioned working with a few police organizations now, and also mentioned, I believe, that maybe a lot of these police don't really have the skills to unravel a scam of this scale. Yeah,
that's a sad part, because I've been in contact with police organization for several years, and there is a European police organization. It's called Europol. You have the Interpol that covers the whole world, and then you have within the EU, the 27 EU countries, a Europol, a cooperation between the EU countries, and both Interpol and Europol has a special task force. It's called the Cybercrime Unit, that is helping national police organization with these kind of very large investigation. The problem for the police there are a number of problems. First of all, these crimes, the criminals, come from different countries, and they are cross-border. And there is a lot of discussions about jurisdiction, because if you take if someone breaks into your home, it's very easy to establish where did the crime occur. It's a crime in your house. That is the jurisdiction. So it's the police organization in your town that is going to investigate and try to find the criminal. But in these cases, when it's come to cybercrimes that is done through the internet, then it's much, much more difficult to establish where did the crime actually occur. Is it where the criminal is sitting before his screen and doing something illegit, or is it where the victim is at the moment where he saw the illegit proposition or whatever it is? And if you are using your smartphone, for instance, you are not using your smartphone just home in your living room. You're moving about, so you could have read the ad, for instance, on social media when you were traveling, and so it's a nightmare for the police to investigate these kind of crimes. So what is in legal terms called the jurisdiction. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is that police organization, they are very good at investigating murders and robberies and such things, because there are normally some evidence to collect or whatever it is. But when we are talking about cyber crimes, then it's very sophisticated technology. The criminals could hide behind darknet or whatever it is, and the different kind of the technical solution that hinders the police to do a full investigation. And the money could also be moved about. And if you are using cryptocurrency, for instance, that add also a large difficulty for the police. So I'm not saying that the police are stupid, are not educated, are not experienced. But what I'm saying is that these kind of crimes are so difficult to investigate because you cannot use the normal police procedures.
Yeah, and honestly, it seems like, you know, maybe some chasing ghosts here with these types of crimes, where the money's probably gone already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I said that I saw just after 5 minutes One of the things I have seen very many times, and it's in the UC Field scam as well, is that when the criminals it shut down the operation, they are shut down the internet platform, nobody could access the account, nobody could withdraw any money. If they just shut down and disappear, then people realize they had been scammed. So what the scammers are doing is to shut down the operation, but they are leaving someone behind, posting different kind of information on the platform, that the platform is shut down, but it's just a temporary problem. We have some problems with the authority. We have had some internal problem that we have to sort out, and so on and so on. And we are going to refund you, but there are different kind of obstacles. The bank didn't allow us to refund, or blah, 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 and so on.
Someone to buy a little time while they run away with the bag.
Yeah, exactly. And then if the police should chase after all these misinformation and the false leads and so on, they are on a constant wild goose chase. And that makes the police work very, very difficult, because they have to follow every lead. They have to follow all the different kind of information, even if it's a misinformation, and they could just take it away. So,
right, but you don't know that until you track down the lead first.
Yeah,
know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I feel very sorry for the police when they are going to investigate these kind of crimes. And what the police organizations, more or less all over the world, has said is that we cannot do anything about this. And that is the sad part.
It's probably true, though.
Yeah.
I got to chime in here, because this one said, whoever this is said I look like a young Johnny Depp. And hey, thanks. That's not the first time I've heard that. Also said I lost 72K. Fuck Russia. And I do want to dial back to a couple comments here that Daniel made about the marketing, the Naked Media Group. And one thing I meant to ask you earlier was about, it sounded like maybe CNN in Mexico was allowed to run some ads on the news down there.
Yeah. So if I'm going back to where I did a comparison to a startup company, because that is something that could explain how this operation works. So if you are looking at these scams as a startup company, you have a business idea, you have a business concept, you have a founder or the founding team, but this founding team needs a number of specialists. It could be IT development, that could be different kind of, you should do an internet platform or e-commerce platform, or there is some kind of software that has to be developed. And then you need specialists in marketing and sales and different kind of management skills as well. So most of these startup companies, they are trying to find a number of specialists who could sort out different kind of things for them. Then you do a business plan. When you have put together your business concept and the team, and you have recruited a number of specialists, then you put together a business plan. And after the business plan, you need to have some kind of financing. You have a lot of expenses before you have any kind of revenue, any kind of money in. There is always a lot of money going out to pay bills and pay for IT developers or whatever it is, and so on. And that's where you're pitching your idea, your business concept, to an investor. It could be what is called in the finance industry an early stage investor or a venture capital company or whatever it is. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen these TV shows, the Shark Tank and the Dragon's Nest and so on, where people come and pitch their idea in front of a panel of investors.
And it's funny. Didn't Mark Cuban get wrapped up with some crypto scam recently?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. He has been in one of these shows as well, and they are very popular. Where people come and present the business concept and say, "Yeah, well, I need $1 million, and you could have 10% share of my company, or something like that." So all these scams, they work exactly like a startup company. So before they are starting operation, before there is any money coming in, there is a lot of money going out to pay bills and such things. And if you're looking at UC Fields, and it's not just UC Fields, but in many of these scams, where there are a quite sophisticated website, you could create accounts and you could see things going, and it's quite sophisticated technology. Sometimes there is an app as well that you could use and so on. That takes a lot of time to build that and implement that. You have to develop it, you have to have a beta version, and you have to test the technology before you could launch your operation. And in the case of UC Fields, when I'm looking at how the website looked at and the functionality of the website and the app and all these kind of things, I could easily say it has been taking between 1.5 and maybe up to 2 years in preparation before they start operation. And during that time, they are just having a lot of costs, a lot of things, a lot of money going out to pay for all the different kind of services they are buying. So and that's why you could compare it to a startup company, because the startup company also need a influx of cash to begin with. Someone that is wants to invest in the startup company. And looking at what UC Field has done, the sophistication of the platform, the different kind of marketing activity. I even have a number of contracts they have signed with these specialists. It's management consultant, it's marketing company. It was mentioned the Naked Media Group. That's a marketing company, for instance. That's actually a 3 Swedish girls who is running this company. They had to be paid for the services before there is any revenue coming in. So if I sum up everything, my estimate is that they had to have some kind of financing between $4 and $5 million before they started operation.
And I believe, I don't know how to frame this question really. I wanted to ask you like who you think's behind this, but I know we talked about sort of this criminal Silicon Valley, as you put it, and I'd like to just for you to explain that, because I don't really know how to ask the question, man.
Yeah. So I think we need to put everything into a larger perspective, because what has been happening for the past 4, 5, 6 years is that there are a number of countries who has now been put under sanctions. The most obvious country is North Korea, for instance. North Korea is completely shut out of all kind of business, international business. They cannot export anything legit, and they cannot import anything legit. But they are still producing nuclear missiles, and they are sending up missiles more or less on a daily basis, and they have a standing army of almost 5 million people, soldiers that is equipped and so on. And the money has to come from somewhere. And what North Korea is doing is to be involved in a number of large international criminal activities. They are doing all kinds of smuggling. They are one of the largest drug producers, methamphetamine, for instance. They are the largest drug producers of methamphetamine in the world, for instance. And they are in arms smuggling and all these kind of activities, illegal activities. Now we have Russia, and Russia has been involved in illegal activities for years and years. But the situation now with Ukraine, for instance, that makes it even more difficult for Russia to have a normal trading relation with with Europe and the US. So there is a need, and Belarus is another country as well who also being involved, and this is very well known for international police organization for many years, that these countries are supporting and harboring criminals and giving support and taking a share of the profit of these criminal activities. So the Russian mafia, they have been specialized in different kind of smuggling and drug dealing and extortion and all kind of these kind of kidnapping as well. And the Russian mafia the center of the Russian mafia has been for centuries in St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg has been the center of the Russian mafia for the last 50, 60 years. Even during the Soviet era, the Russian mafia actually existed in St. Petersburg. So what the Russian mafia have seen now is that if we are going to do drug dealing, or if we are going to do weapon smuggling or whatever it is, that is a very costly operation. We need to have a supply chain, and we have to bribe people, authorities, and so on. But if we could turn into cybercrime, that is much less risky for them. It doesn't cost very much to build the operation and the organization. We could just have a number of people sitting behind a screen somewhere. And so what has been developing through the past 4, 5, 6 years is that St. Petersburg has become what I'm calling a criminal Silicon Valley. Exactly the same as Silicon Valley and Palo Alto in California works, where people who come with a business concept could come in contact with specialists who could help them with IT and such things, and also financing, for instance. In Palo Alto, in Silicon Valley, there are more than 1,800 venture capital companies represented who are helping these startup companies with financing and such things. So what has been happening today is that St. Petersburg has become a criminal Silicon Valley, where people who have a business concept, a criminal business concept, could come and they could connect to all these specialists, buying different kind of services for marketing, for IT, and such things. There is an environment, there is a community where you could recruit these kind of specialists. And then you go to the mafia and pitch your idea and say, I need $5 million, and I'm going to invest $5 million in this and this and so on. Exactly the same as the startup company came to the Shark Tank and these guys and pitched their idea before a panel. But sure, you could just change the panel to the Russian mafia. And everybody knows within the international police organization, that the Russian mafia and the Russian secret police, the FSB, that is just two sides of the same coin. They are definitely in bed together, for sure.
Can I stop you for a second? I got one comment here I want to throw up from E-Grower saying, why have some EU countries stopped? I assume he means investigations. Why have some EU countries stopped the investigations instead of bundling them from the start? For many victims, quote unquote, the proceedings have been discontinued, and it's like a slap in the face from authorities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I come across all the time a lot of things that doesn't make any sense to me when it comes to the police and what they are doing. Of course, the police doesn't tell publicly all things they are doing. We mentioned earlier that I'm working with the police because the police comes to me and asks if I could help them sharing all the information we have. And our experience and our knowledge. I have a cooperation with 5 different European police organizations, and they're sharing information and so on. But they cannot reveal all the things they are doing. And as I said, if you are a police, you have to follow certain procedures, and these procedures are not very good at investigating these kind of crimes. And as I said, it's a nightmare when you are I'm just going to take one example to just show how difficult it is where police organizations cross-border is going to work together. For instance, if you have a cooperation between, let's say, Germany and France. I'm just taking an example. If there is a cooperation between Germany and France, then they need to decide who is going to pay for the investigation. When we are traveling, for instance, or we are buying different kind of consultants that we need to do IT forensic, for instance, is it the Germans that is going to pay from their budget, or is it the French that is going to pay from their budget? How are we going to split the bill, so to say? And if there are 1,000 victims in Germany and there is not more than 500 victims in France, for instance, are we going to split the bill by how many victims there are in the different countries? It's a nightmare when the police organization are going to do these kind of cooperation. And that's why it's so slow, and that's why it doesn't work.
That's a great point there.
Yeah.
I do want to throw this other comment up from the same guy who said banks are also trying to turn this situation around in arena now, trying to accuse theoretical bank customers of being perpetrators of money laundering.
Yeah. That is also. I should say first that I have identified more than 300 companies and organizations who has been what we are calling facilitators, those who has done some kind of business together with UC Field, in this case, didn't ask any question who they were cooperating with or just looked the other way. So we have a list of more than 300 companies. And among these 300 companies are more than 150 banks. Because one of those that has let down all these investors, one of those who has failed in the compliance and didn't ask any questions or didn't look at all the red flags that was popping up, is definitely the banks. I'm surprised about how the banks has failed their customers. So my target today.
Let me ask you. Yeah. Are you surprised? Because, boy, I mean, I've read certainly some of these stories. Here, let me pop one up. I'm sure you've seen this for everyone at home, because this doesn't surprise me at all. But, a quick Google search of like HSBC and money laundering, and they got caught multiple times.
Absolutely.
So to me, this isn't surprising at all.
No. Now, for me, it's not surprising. Having said that, I'm still surprised about how much failure the banks has done in this business. Because if I make an estimate of how many transactions altogether from all these 125,000 victims into one single bank account in Cyprus during more than 2 years, 2 years and 3 months, there have been approximately 6 million transactions. 6 million transactions. And you should remember that a SWIFT transaction or a SEPA transaction, that has to be done not just digitally, but it has to be printed out as well. So there had to be a hard copy of each and every of these transactions. So you could just imagine the room full of 600 6 million transactions. It's huge. It's piles.
That's crazy.
It fills room after room with just the printouts of these transactions. So when I've been talking to my friends within the finance industry, and I have explained the user field and what's going on with all the transaction, how many investors, how much transactions, the kind of investors, and so on. Everybody all over the world, I'm traveling all over the world all the time. Everybody says to me, it cannot be done. It cannot be done. If UC started an operation, the banking system, the international banking system, the SWIFT, the SEPA, and all the individual banks should have shut down the operation before 1 month, not more than 2 months. And that's why I'm saying I don't have any proof. I have statistics enough to say there is a very clear indication that there is some kind of corruption of the international money transferring system. They have managed to go under the radar.
And I would have to guess, yeah. I mean, even before you could move money around at, the push of a button, people still found ways to do sketchy things with money. And I assume, and what also was an interesting point you made was that all this money was just 6 million transactions in one account in a bank in Cyprus. How many other scams are going on that have another account, and how many millions of transactions are happening?
Yeah. I know hundreds of different kinds of scams. And just to give you one interesting statistics, and this statistics come actually from the central bank in Russia. It was published in March this year. And this was the central bank in Russia. They announced that during the last 6 months, from July 2022 to the end of 2022, to the last December 2022, 6 months, they have identified 967 scams that was connected to the Russian banks, or there was some kind of that they could prove that this was some kind of investment scam.
In 6 months, huh?
Yeah, 967 scams. And that is just from Russia during 6 months.
And that's just the ones they found.
Yeah. Exactly.
I assume there's probably more that they didn't find.
Yeah, exactly. So there are thousands and thousands. But having said that, it's also, if we make the comparison to startups, if there is a very successful startup company, I think you have heard about what is called the unicorns. The unicorns, that is a startup company that has become a valuation of more than $1 billion US dollars.
Amazons and shit like that.
Exactly. They were unicorns.
Hmm.
And very, very few startup companies. The statistics says that less than 10% of all startup companies actually survive and starts a business. 90% actually dies because of different kind of reasons. But between 9 and 10% of all startup companies survive. But out of these 9-10%, there is very, very few who become a success, and very, very, very few that become a unicorn. That's a 1 in a million. And UC Fields, and I have never seen a legit unicorn becoming a unicorn in less than 2 years. There is no example of a startup company that has become a unicorn in less than 2 years. UC Field become a unicorn within 8 months.
Wow.
So that gives you a perspective of how successful they were. I'm not saying there are hundreds of UC Field scams like the UC Field when it comes to the size and such things, but they are not unique. There are a number of things, and especially within the cryptocurrency business, for instance, there are hundreds of these scams.
I see them online all the time, and it just looks like a lot of pump and dump bullshit activity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this is a very large industry. According to very, very conservative estimates, the Interpol says that investment scams all over the world has a total revenue of between 50 and 60 billion dollars per year. And 50 to 60 billion dollars is equal to the whole illegal drug smuggling industry.
Damn. I want to slap this up again just to throw it. Boom. I'm talking with Lars Olofsson about the Juicy Field scam over in Europe. Yeah, I just got to slap that up every now and then. Cool. Can I ask you about this before I forget, Lars? I got to throw this up too.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you ended up with this pie on your face, man?
Yeah. That's right. Well, we have to put that into context as well, because I was very early. I said publicly that I'm not going after the criminals. I'm going after the one that I'm calling the facilitators, those who has in one way or another help the criminals, enable the criminals to do the scams. And it's quite it's important to know that these scams, not just UC Fields, any of these scams, they are dependent on a number of companies and individuals who doesn't care of who they are doing business with. If people did have some spine, if people have some backbone, and people were asking some basic question, these scammers wouldn't be so successful as they are. Then I said, and I went publicly in August, September last year, that I'm not going after the criminals, so you don't have to go after me. Right. I'm going after the facilitators.
Which was
then in May this year, I
wanted to cut you off because I did want to ask you and make sure you're staying safe out here. And it sounds like some of these people are incredibly sketchy characters.
Yes, to say the least. Yes, they are really bad people. Yeah. Really bad.
Sorry to cut you off, but carry on. And I do hope you're staying safe over there.
So in May this year, April, May this year, I had enough information to go public and say there hasn't just been an investment scam, there has been a money laundering scheme as well. And you have to remember that more or less every large police organization. I talked to one police officer in Europol just the other week, and he said to me, more or less 100% of all these investment scams also contain a money laundering scheme. Those are two things that they are so linked together, the money laundering and the investment scam.
It does seem like those things would go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And the classic setup of money laundering is to take black money, invest it into something, and have a return of investment, and all of a sudden your black money has become white money, right? So it's in the nature. So I started to talk about money laundering in April, May this year, because then I had enough evidence to say, yes, I know there has been a money laundering. I had the suspicion, but I didn't have the hard fact, the hard evidence. But now I have the hard evidence. And when I started to talk about money laundering, that's where I was started to be attacked on internet, because there had been a kind of information war going on for the past 4 or 5 months. They are spreading all kind of rumors and all kind of fake new information and such things. So I went to a conference in Berlin. It's called the ICBC, International Cannabis Business Conference, ICBC. And they have been, ICBC, UC Field has been the main sponsor of ICBC's conferences and exhibitions. During these 2 years, they were in operation. So I signed up to go to this ICBC conference in Berlin. This was a couple of months ago. I bought tickets to the events. After a couple of days, after I had bought tickets and actually had the tickets in my hand, I received an email saying that we are now closing down. We are not accepting your that you are entering into the exhibition, so we are refunding your money. So you are not welcomed. And so I said to myself, well, I have booked a number of meetings with journalists and so on. So I'm going to Berlin anyway, and I'm going to this large conference hotel anyway, and I'm going to sit in the lobby and making interviews with local media and people that I've been booked meetings with. And the first day, and just after a couple of hours, I was just in the middle of an interview with German media when someone came up from behind me and smashed a cake in my face. And then there was a lot of drama. I was running after this individual. I almost catched him, but he managed to escape. And the picture you see, you posted, was a picture taking of me outside the hotel. So that is on the parking lot outside the hotel with the cake in my face.
And it sounded like maybe Daniel was there with you.
Yeah, Daniel was with me, and my business partner, Mrs. Nina, was also there. And Daniel was actually, he didn't saw the attack, and Nina didn't saw the attack because they were outside, and I was having the interview in the lobby of a hotel. But Daniel was also attacked later that day when he went from this conference hotel to his own hotel. He was also attacked from behind and smashed in his head. And both events, both these things are now under police investigation.
And now right behind you, when you got hit with the cake, which we couldn't see in the picture there, but right behind you, isn't there an obnoxious Lamborghini that says Juicy Fields all over?
That was just crazy. I was stunned, because when we came to, we stayed at another hotel. So this was one of the largest hotels and conference centers in all Germany. And outside this event, outside on the parking lot, on the driveway up to the hotel, was this high-end Lamborghini, completely with all the Juicy Field logos all over the car, gold painted with all the Juicy Field logos, and some very, very suspicious guys around this Lamborghini. And it was parked for, I think it was parked for something between 3 and 4 hours outside. And to this story is that when Juicy Field was the main sponsor of ICBC the year before in Barcelona, at a conference called Spanabis, that also was organized by ICBC. Juicy Field has two high-end Lamborghinis, completely with all the logos all over them, and so on, and they were the main sponsor. So I was so surprised that someone actually turned up outside this cannabis exhibition, because at that time they wasn't allowed inside, but they were still having this Lamborghini car outside with Juicy Field's logos and show their faces.
Wow, so they weren't allowed inside. I didn't remember you telling me that.
No. So they wasn't.
And neither were you, it sounds like.
No, yeah, well, I could just sit in the lobby, but I wasn't allowed into the conference room.
Because of this.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, it's cool that you still went anyway. I'm sorry you got pied in the face, but
yeah,
you know, what a slap in the face to investors who are getting fleeced for, you know, tens of thousands of euros, and these guys got, you know, Lamborghinis out in front of these giant hotels, sponsoring these events, even probably with some of the money that they stole from people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm saying publicly, I know that ICBC is one of these, what I'm calling the facilitators, because if you're a professional within the cannabis industry, you would know that Juicy Field was a scam. You cannot allow, you shouldn't allow Juicy Field to be the main sponsor of your event. That is just crazy.
Unless you don't mind about shit like that, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Unless maybe those guys are friends with them, you know? Hey.
Might be. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
It's usually either one or the other. They're either in on it, or they're too stupid to know that it's going on, or sometimes a little of both.
Yeah. But anyway, if you're a professional within the cannabis industry, you know that how Juicy Field was presented with as I told before, with the return of investment and all these kind of things, you would have known that this was not a legit business for sure.
I think you're right about that. I looked into some of it, and it certainly had a lot of red flags for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things I do want to ask you, I'm getting towards the end here, but I'd like to hear about sort of what's going on in court with this case. Maybe if you've got any updates. Seems like a lot of your people here are listening. If you got any updates for them, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So what I said was my legal strategy is to go after the facilitators, and that is based on very hard-earned experience, because going after the criminals is more or less useless. They have disappeared with the money. They have fake identities and so on. And I don't have the resources that the police organization have, and I cannot enforce information like the police can, and so on. So what I have to do is to find another strategy to help my clients to get the money back. And what I'm saying is my target is the facilitators, those who didn't ask anything about who they did money business with. And looking at how UC Field, and not just UC Field, a lot of scams are actually marketed on social media, and especially Facebook and Instagram. And that belongs to Meta Platform Incorporation. That is the parent company for Facebook and Instagram.
Which is one of the couple questions I got left on my list here, is if you feel like they're sort of partially responsible for a lot of these scams.
Definitely. Because if we're looking into what has been happening at Facebook and Meta, Mark Zuckerberg has been interviewed, and people who has been representative for Facebook has for several years said that we know there are criminals who are doing marketing and sales activity on Facebook and Instagram. We are trying to identify all these scams. We are trying to edit out the ads and so on. And that has been told by representatives and even Mark Zuckerberg himself for several years, where they are saying, we are going to do something about this. We need to develop some new technology, some IA technology or whatever it is. And what I said is now that enough is enough. Now you have Mark Zuckerberg. Now you have promised that you should edit away. You shouldn't allow these criminals to use Facebook and Instagram. So what I did was to file in Sweden a lawsuit against Mark Zuckerberg, because in Sweden, there is a possibility to do what is called a private criminal prosecution. You have a public prosecutor, but as a lawyer and a representative of victims of crimes, I could also do a private criminal prosecution. Because if the public prosecutor says, I'm not going to do a prosecution, then I'm allowed to step into the public prosecutor's position and make the prosecution myself. And that is called the private criminal prosecution. So that's what I've been doing in Sweden.
Interesting.
And the reason why I'm choose Sweden is that in Sweden, up in the north of Sweden, up above the polar circle, that is an Arctic region in Sweden. There is one of Facebook's largest server facility in the world. It serves more than 1.3 billion Facebook users. So it's a huge facility. There is more than 4,000 people employed in this huge facility.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And so there are thousands and thousands of computers. It's a huge building. So there is a jurisdiction in Sweden because Facebook have the legal entity in Sweden and they have this server facility in Sweden. And that's why there is a legal jurisdiction in Sweden for making a lawsuit. And I'm not just, and it's not a civil case, it's a criminal case. Because what I would like the court to decide, is there a responsibility for the one who is in charge of the operation? And Mark Zuckerberg is actually the corporate CEO. He's not the president. He's not the board of director. He is in charge of the daily operation of Meta Platform Incorporation. That is Facebook and Instagram. And in the same manner as a bank CEO is prosecuted for letting the banks being involved in money laundering, for instance. That is a criminal offense. What I would like the Swedish court is to review, is there a responsibility for him? And what has been happening is that there are 3 levels of courts in Sweden, the same as in the US. You have a district court, and then there is the appeal court, and then there is the Supreme Court. So the case was filed in the district court where Meta had this large server facility. And the district court decided this is something that is too complicated for us. It needs setting some new precedents of how you are going to judge about the responsibility and so on. So there is a special paragraph in the court's code in Sweden where the district court could move the case up to the next level, to the appeal courts, because there has to be able to set some new precedents. So,
sorry to interrupt you, but you've sort of tied this into your thing that you're doing with the Juicy Fields case, where you're trying to hold the facilitators accountable, and then sort of wrapping up social media into that same idea.
Yeah. So social media and the banks, as I mentioned before, social media and the banks are the main facilitators of not just Juicy Field, but all these scams. If the social media would have not allowed these scammers to use the Facebook and Instagram, for instance, to do the marketing, they more or less shouldn't be successful. So what the appeal court said, and this was moved, it didn't take more than 1 week from the district court to the appeal court. And the appeal court, they thought about this for a couple of months and then say, we are using the same exemption as the district court. So we are moving the case up to the Supreme Court. So today, the case against Mark Zuckerberg, he is privately criminal prosecuted. So he's prosecuted in Sweden. And the the indictment is aiding and abetting aggravated fraud. He has helped the criminals.
So this is going all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So it's in the Supreme Court now. And what we're waiting for, and I suppose it takes another month or something like that, that the Supreme Court has to decide, is this interesting enough to set a new precedent? And if it is, we are going to set a trial date.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to check back with you after that.
Yeah. And the Swedish system is very different from the US system. So you cannot compare to the US system or the English system. Because in the US, you could argue for years and years and years, and it takes so long time. The Swedish system is very, very straightforward. It doesn't take more than a month between the different, and the counterparts in this case, Mark Zuckerberg, cannot make any legal arguments about this wasn't jurisdiction and blah, 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 and all these kind of things that you could argue in the US.
Nice.
Yeah. And what is interesting is that if the court decides there is a need for setting a new precedent, we are setting a trial date. The trial date will be within a month after this decision. As I said, the decision would most likely come within a month. And a month after that, there is going to be the first trial date. And Mark Zuckerberg has to come to Sweden by himself. He cannot send just his lawyer because he's prosecuted.
Well, I assume he can also bring his lawyer too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if he is convicted, he faces up to 6 years in prison in Sweden.
Boy, that's interesting. Good luck, man. So what are you prepared to argue that case on that timeline? That seems quick.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. Yeah. I'm going to put this guy behind bars.
I'd love to see that. I'm supposed to remain neutral on all the issues, but that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Now, there is so much happening in Europe when it comes to the responsibility for and accountability for social media platform. That was just a week ago introduced a new law in Europe saying that all the social media platform who has more than 45 million users must introduce a new system where they find out if there are these kind of illegal activity or misinformation and such things as well. So that there is a lot of discussions in Europe about the responsibility for social media. So we are very much in time with this discussion about actually setting some new precedents about the responsibility.
Good. I like how you wrapped that in with this other Juicy Fields thing, man. I feel like that was a clever move there, you sly dog. I do want to sneak
and as I said, Facebook or Meta in this case is just 1 out of 300. So Meta is just 1 out of 300. There is a long list of you have YouTube, you have Google, you have CNN, you have Forbes magazine. There are a number of companies who have allowed UC Fields to use the platform for sales and marketing.
And that is a great question. Like, are those people, do they have any responsibility here? I'd really love to know an answer. I think the obvious answer is yes, right? Or they should.
Take Google, for instance. Google have a non-cannabis policy, for instance. You cannot advertise cannabis, even legal cannabis. You cannot advertise illegal cannabis on Google Ads, for instance. It's not allowed according to their own rules.
It's hard to even post pictures. Like if I posted a picture of weed on Facebook right now, I would probably get an instant 30-day ban.
Exactly.
Which is weird because on Instagram I post it all the time and they're owned by the same company. Then I go on Facebook, they shut my account down for 30 days. Like this is legal. We live in a legal state and we've already decided this. And they should let that slide.
According to their own regulations, there is a ban on cannabis, for instance. So that's one of the surprising thing as well. And there is another thing. It's not just the criminal code in Sweden, because if you're a public company listed on the stock exchange in the US and elsewhere, there is something that is called corporate governance. And corporate governance is that your auditing company, like Ernst & Young and KPMG and all these large auditing companies, they have the responsibility to audit and look into if the public, a listed company, is in some way involved in criminal activity.
Curaleaf.
Yeah, exactly. So when I said before, there are so many different kind of institutions and organizations that has failed in their responsibility and the compliance to the regulations and the laws they have to comply with. In this case, the UC Field case is very, very interesting because all these companies and organizations, they have failed. From the auditing company to social media to banks, and not to mention the financial regulator in Germany, for instance, is called BaFin. It's the same as SAC in the US, the finance regulator. The finance regulator in Germany should have seen that UC Field didn't have the license they needed to give investment advices or investment management.
Yeah, that seems pretty basic. Isn't that their job?
Absolutely. Yeah, it took them almost 2 years to find out that there is a company that is splashing all over the world with marketing and sales activity for cannabis, and you could invest in cannabis and you have this beautiful return of investment, and you are not allowed to do that without a license to do this kind of thing. And it took them 2 years to find out.
Maybe they got some friends in that agency.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you have heard about the Wirecard scandal. It was some years ago. There is now court proceedings, and a number of people has been prosecuted. And Wirecard was a huge scandal where one of the largest company, the most valued company on the German stock exchange, turned out to have cooked the book, and completely everything was just a shambles. There wasn't this value that was presented and such thing. And investor lost something like 15 billion euros or something like that. So it was a huge scandal. Man. And it was BaFin, the regulator in Germany. They were informed about that this Wirecard company was giving out false information years before it was shut down. So there is a number of scandals in Germany about the regulator, the authorities didn't do the work.
Yep. Hey, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
We had a $400 million Ponzi scheme here involved with the EB5 program, which was an investment scam where you could get a green card to the United States, and they just stole all the money, and it turned out to be $400 million or something. And the Department of Financial Regulations in the Securities Division, who are supposed to oversee that kind of shit, not only did they let that slide right across their desk and didn't see it or whatever they said, but then the guy got promoted, and he's like treasurer of Vermont now, Mike Piesiak. So he went from deputy commissioner to commissioner of DFR after letting the biggest fraud in Vermont go right over his desk. And it's, I call it failing up. Really just makes me wonder.
It's the same as this subprime scandal in 2008, where the regulators and all the institutions that should have seen
credit rating agencies. I was just thinking about that in the back of my. I was like, this, has that same. Well, Lars, look, I'm running out of shit here. I do want to thank you so much for your time. I want to slap this up one more time. Lars Olofsson, we've been talking about the Juicy Field scam and some other scams too that I like. Lars, at the end of the show, and this has been fantastic, I want to thank you for inviting all these people here. Daniel, if you're listening, man, thank you so much for lighting a fire under my ass here. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I really hope we can catch up.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, here's the deal. At the end of the show, I say thanks for coming and ask you if we missed anything, or if you've got any shameless plugs or shout outs. Now's the time for that. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a pleasure.
And I could also say that we have a website, a special website where we are presenting everything that is happening in the case. It's called ucfieldcase.com, the ucfieldcase.com. And you could read about, we are posting news all the time. And if you are a victim, for instance, you could still join the class action. So if you're going into a website, ucfieldcase.com, you see the address, and you could sign up as a client in the class action as well.
Cool. That's beautiful. I think that's going to be a good place to wrap it. I see a lot of comments over here that I'm not going to have time to respond to, but I do want to thank you all for listening. And I'm going to sign it off, guys. Remember, the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Thank you, Lars. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Stay safe.
Great to